Okay. My understanding of it is that to be a brother or a sister in Jesus or a child of God has to do with accepting Jesus and his particular the theology of Jesus and the message of Jesus and everything like that. If you accept that, then you become a brother in the metaphorical sense.
Well, I mean, technically, Paul specifically says baptized into the family of God. So you have to be baptized into the faith.
Yeah. Right.
So, knowing that, like, how do you separate out when he's talking about blood brother and when he's talking about a sort of fellow member of the Christian community?
By contrast, he calls someone brother. If he's going to say that they're all brothers, he wouldn't be calling one specifically brother or over another. There would be no reason to do that.
Okay, what kind of reason do you think he would need in order to separate out different levels of Christians?
I don't really think that he tried separating out levels of Christians.
Well, no, actually, he does, because he separates the apostles from other Christians. Apostles are those that have seen the risen Jesus, while other general Christians are just people that are baptized into the faith.
Okay. Why does he differentiate between the apostles and brothers of the Lord in Corinthians?
In Corinthians, which Corinthians?
Uh, Let me pull it up real quick right here. First Corinthians 9:5. Do we not have the right to take along a believing wife as do the other apostles and the brothers of the Lord and Cephas?
Well, right. I mean, that's the same situation as 119. Because he's separating out the apostles, those that have seen the risen Jesus, and then there's the brothers of the Lord, which are other Christians, and then you have Cephas, who Cephas, Cephas. I've heard it pronounced both ways, so stop giving me shit about how not you specifically, but I've seen it expressed both ways, Cephas and Cephas. Either way that you pronounce it, he is obviously set apart from the other apostles and just general brothers of the Lord. How do you distinguish using it that way? And when Paul, says brothers and sisters, or he talks in general to just other Christians, or writes a letter to a whole church, and he calls them brothers and sisters.
Well, clearly then he's talking, again, it has to do with context and contrast. Contextually, when you say brothers and sisters to a bunch of people who are not your biological brothers and sisters, then they're not brothers. Then he's not talking biologically. But when you decide to contrast, because the funny thing is that he calls this James in Galatians an apostle. He says that he saw the Lord, so he's not one of the just mere brothers of the Lord. He said, I saw no other apostle but James, the brother of the Lord. So James is an apostle. This is talking about an apostle named James, so one who saw the Lord. You can respond. Sorry.
No. I mean, I would say that he's setting apart there. I mean, I don't think he's obviously not including them, including James in the list of apostles, because he's saying I didn't see any of the apostles save for James, the brother of the Lord. So, like, when he's meaning apostles, obviously those are Christians, and then because he's not an apostle, he mentions this random James that's there.
Okay, here's what it says. I did not see any of the other apostles except James, the brother of the Lord. Okay. I mean, we can. The except has to do with apostle. James is an exception to not seeing other apostles. James is an apostle. He's the exception.
hold on. What version are you reading from here?
I'm reading from the NIV.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so if you go to the Blue Letter Bible, you can actually read it in the original Greek, and it says, "Other but of the apostles, none. James, the brother of the Lord." Just reverse interlinear. Hold on. But other the Gospels saw I none, save James, the Lord's brother. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I get the NIV says except for that, but I don't see James as being included in the apostles. Yeah, like I don't feel like that is including it. I feel like he is saying I saw none of the apostles, but I did see James.
Well, we can look at the Greek here. So
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
yep, so we have I, and me, me. So it's a if. So if not. So other, however, of the apostles, none I saw, if not James, the brother of the Lord. It can still be used as a direct exception. That's actually how it's used elsewhere. You can look at it contextually elsewhere in the New Testament. That's how it's used as an exception to a rule.
Okay. I mean I still fundamentally agree on that interpretation of it. I mean it I feel like we're at another impasse. I still feel like you have to totally negate Paul's complete theology on brothers of the Lord in order to make your case here. Because I feel like he would have to like distinguish like brothers in the Lord, the just a general Christian, and brothers like in the Lord, like of the flesh.
Mm.
We'll have
to agree to disagree.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
I agree. I think most of these things we're going to come at an impasse on because we're not going to be able, like, I'm not going to be able to persuade you, and you're not going to be able to persuade me. So, I mean, I get that you read it as that he's saying that James is an apostle, but what I'm saying is that the brother of the Lord is just a fictive, like it's a kinship title that exist in Paul's theology. And in order for him to distinguish that from being like a flesh and blood brother, he would need to say that directly in the sentence rather than convolute it with his entire thoughts on brothers in the Lord. Because everywhere else that he uses that word adelphos, he means this like other Christians. He means these other Christians that are not blood brothers, but they are actually adopted into the family of God and are brothers of Jesus or the Christ or Lord. So I believe that there's even a verse in the Bible, in Paul's epistles, that even say that everybody is of the seed of Abraham once you're baptized as a Christian. So, I mean, I feel like Paul's entire theology around brothers and everything like that is very much of a fictive kinship.
Okay. Well, do you want to move on to the Josephus?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few paragraphs here on Josephus that I've got notes on. So, I mean, if you want to cover that, because I know it kind of backs up your James, the brother of the Lord thing.
Yeah. How? I'd like to hear actually what you have on it first.
Okay. Well, I'll just read verbatim from my notes here. One external reference to back up the idea of the James being the brother of Jesus comes from Josephus. In Antiquities of the Jews 2200, Josephus says, "The brother of Jesus, who is called Christ, the name for whom was James and some others." Most likely, this is referring to Jesus ben Damnius rather than Christ, and the who was called Christ is an interpolation by a later scribe. The original text either named Jesus as Jesus ben Damnius or did not name him ben Damnius at all. The one called Christ is exactly what a scribe would place as an interlinear note. There is a similar interlinear note that occurs in Tacitus' Annals 1544 to indicate that passage was about Christ, which, of course, I consider definitely not to be about Christ, but Christus for various reasons, which we could go into if it really wants to go there. But the phrase used here is grammatically what we would expect to find as an interlinear note. If the Testimonium Flavianum had existed in any way, Josephus would have reminded his readers about why the Christ title was significant. He does this actually in Antiquities of the Jews 20:199, where he states, "He was also of the sect of the Sadducees, who are very rigid in judging offenders above all the rest of the Jews, as we have already observed." At the end, Josephus indicates that they have already covered the Sadducees. Christ being a title in Judaism would need to be explained somehow. And all we have here is a participle phrase. This is not what Josephus would write at all. Another reason to doubt this phrase is because it copies Matthew 1:16 verbatim, who is called Christ at the very end of that particular verse. It's not impossible that he came up with this phrase, but he would not use it in the same way as Christians would. That is why it's more probable that a later Christian interpolated it into Josephus's work. Also, the execution of Christians doesn't really make sense in this particular story. They not only fail to mention their crimes, but also the execution angers many influential Jews who then seek out Aeneas's punishment for the execution. Which on later down in that section, they actually get Ananus removed and instill Jesus as the high priest, because James was killed, or maybe they. Crap, I can't. I might have switched that around. I can't remember. I'm sorry. But we could see in Pliny the Younger in the 2nd century was ordered to execute Christians for just being Christian. So it seems like it would be a non-issue for influential Jews that would warrant punishment. And I think that there's a few more arguments that I can probably pull up somewhere, but that's as far as I got with that. But I would say that I feel like it was an interpolated passage. I feel like there are good arguments that suggest that it actually is interpolated. So that would be my opinion.
Okay, so I know the interlinear argument. That one, that's a Richard Carrier one. I know that one. Prepared for that one. Can we screen share now? Can you get my screen up, guys?
Yeah, and I just want to let you guys know we've got about 15 minutes left total.
Okay,
so just factor that in accordingly.
Okay. Okay, sweet. So my screen is up. Everyone can see it. Everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So here's the passage right here. So 29:1. There we have James's name. There we have Jesus's name. Here's our passage talking about James. We have Esu tal legomeno Christo Lakabos and Onomoa. So I butchered the Greek. Sorry, everyone. So here's my first problem with what you're saying is that grammatically it seems like it's an interlinear note. The problem with the argument is that there's no cross-referencing with any other work of Josephus. Carrier's argument in particular brings up that this right here, legomenio, the verb, would be a participle clause that could spark a digression. So in order to even know if that would be true, we'd have to compare it to other references in Josephus. And what do you know? When we do that, here's the same verb, legomenos, conjugated in the nominative, and it does not spark a digression. If I have the translation, Basically, it says at an incline, the incline ascent of Engedi, right here, at a place that was called the Eminence, and there's the title right there. So, place